All right. Now, this is a terrible story. This is a terrible story, but I do feel responsibility to update you guys on what's happening in the nation, broadly speaking, more so than just what's happening in the world of music and hip hop in particular. This does affect all of us because hip hop is culture and it's also community. And so we need to understand what's potentially happening to our communities. Now, as you know, there have been a number of ICE raids that have been taking place nationwide. It was a big deal here in Los Angeles. There has been an announcement that the Trump administration is sending the National Guard to Chicago. All love to Chicago. 1 second applause. And this is going to continue. You know, my dad, he's in South Carolina, and his girlfriend was telling me how there was a meeting with Lindsey Graham. That's their representative. Lindsey Graham had a meeting in the area, in the district, to let them know that ICE is coming to South Carolina. It's coming to South Carolina. And so we're in unprecedented times, at least for the times that all of us on this planet have been alive. And this doesn't look like it's going to be stopping anytime soon because the Supreme Court just gave the okay to racial profiling. Now, here's what we mean. The court's ruling allows ICE to resume its indiscriminate roundups of LA's Latino residents can only be described as one thing. Right. And so this article is by Eli Mistel. He is a journalist. He's a lawyer. And he's also someone who studies the Supreme Court. He wrote a book about the Supreme Court and how basically the Constitution is kind of trash. Right. He has an angle where he can explain it. But I think certain things we can agree with. Right. If we have the 13th Amendment says slavery's over unless you're in jail, that's kind of trash. If we have an amendment that says corporations are people, that's kind of trash. Corporations are not people. Okay. I can think of a few things that I think are trash about the Constitution without being a bootlicker or sounding crazy. So here's the Eli Mistel's article, and he lays out the landscape. But, you know, we talk about certain issues here on this channel periodically. And I know it's very easy to look at other communities and say, hey, it's not happening to me. And one thing I can definitely tell you is that it never stops in one place. It never stops in one place. I've talked about this quite a bit. I enjoyed my FAFO content, and I definitely see all these people who are getting exactly what they voted for. But I also think that everybody individually and collectively at this point in time needs to understand what potentially could be coming to you next. And so this article, I think, gives a pretty good look at it. It's published in The Nation. Here's Eli Mistel. He says, on Monday morning, the Supreme Court allowed ICE to resume racially profiling all Latinos in Los Angeles under the suspicion that they might be illegal immigrants. Under the suspicion. The order is technically temporary, allowing racial profiling to happen only until the court reviews the full record. But the Republican justices made it incredibly clear that whenever the court gets around to voting on the merits of the case, they will still be in favor of racial profiling. The vote was predictably 6-3 along party lines, with alleged attempted rapist Brett Kavanaugh as the only justice in the Republican Party who bothered to explain his racist excuse for reasoning. And so he's going to explain more about why this is racist. I mean, it's very racist. This is very racist, especially following the ruling that got rid of affirmative action. Right. In that ruling, they said every other type of selection is fine. We can do legacy admissions. We can do it by region. We can do it by athletics, but we can't do it by race. Looking at colleges considering race is against the Constitution. And here they're saying the exact opposite. They're saying, but racial profiling is fine. There is no problem there. Right. And so if you're looking for consistencies from a legal standpoint or from a constitutional standpoint, there really isn't any. But if you're looking for consistencies in terms of a worldview standpoint, they bring us all the way back to the 1950s, baby, if not farther in a lot of cases. And this is just the latest example. The case is called Nome versus Perdomo, and it has been on the Supreme Court's shadow docket for months. The issue emerged at the height of Trump's attack on LA when multiple citizens reported that ICE was round up by anybody who was Latino or looked Latino for questioning. Racial profiling is unconstitutional, or was until this morning, and people sued, including the named plaintiff in this case, Pedro Vasquez Perdomo. District Court Judge Mame E. Frimpong, a Biden appointee, issued an emergency injunction prohibiting the raids in July, but the Trump administration appealed that injunction to the Supreme Court. In a rare example of honesty from this administration, it admitted that it was racially profiling Latinos and promised to do so again if the Supreme Court lifted the injunction. The government admitted it was only looking at 4 factors before pulling the people off the street: their apparent race or ethnicity. They're upfront about this. Whether they spoke Spanish or spoke English with an accent, what you sound like. The type of location where they were found. You at Home Depot, dog? You out here doing some stereotypically Latino jobs, immigrant jobs? The type of job they appeared to do. I shouldn't have to explain how this is racist, but since white Republicans might read this, I guess I do. If you are a white guy anywhere in LA and you are presumptively legal and ICE will not bother you. If you are a Vietnamese woman working at a nail parlor, you are also presumptively okay. If you are a Chinese guy running a dry cleaner, you're good. Name the race and the racially stereotypical job, and according to the US government, you are not on the list, at least for now. That's a key line right there. At least for now. Obviously, once the government greenlights racial profiling against one group of people, it's easy for the white people running the joint to support racial profiling against another. It always happens. Always happens. But for now, the government's racism is focused on Latinos. If you're Latino of any description, or if you merely look like you could be Latino and you speak with a Spanish accent and you appear to be at Home Depot or a car wash or just waiting for your freaking bus, ICE claims it has reasonable suspicion to pull you off the street and demand that you prove your citizenship. It is a literal double standard. Being Latino or looking Latino presumptively makes you suspicious to ICE. Latino is such an interesting one too, because the Latino diaspora is pretty dynamic. You know, I mean, you've got Sammy Sosa Dominicans, you've got retirement Sammy Sosa Dominicans, you've got Television and Univision, you've got Mexicans, you've got Guatemalans, you've got Venezuelans. And the racial makeup is like Latino to me is more of a culture than a race. You're right. You can go look at a bunch of dark-skinned people and say, hey, you can make an argument as an ICE agent and be like, yo, he looks like Sammy Sosa. He might be Dominican. You know what I mean? It to me, it's a lot more broad than what I think. To me, what this says is presumptively Latino could be a lot of things. I think we know what they're targeting now or where this is starting. But presumptively Latino could be a lot of things. Let me know if you agree with that point, if you disagree with that point. And Supreme Court decided that such racism can continue. Kavanaugh starts where all the races do these days by saying that there are a lot of illegal immigrants in the country. He then goes on to estimate that there are only 2 million undocumented people living in Los Angeles alone, adding there's an extremely high number and percentage of illegal immigrants in the Los Angeles area. But if I could stop Kavanaugh right there, I'd point out that even if he thinks there are 2 million illegal immigrants in Los Angeles, he has not established that they are all Latino. And even if he racistly thinks that there are 2 million illegal Latino immigrants in LA, that's still only a minority percentage of the 5 million Latinos living in LA. Los Angeles is around 50% Latino. Kavanaugh's treatment of all of them as suspect is the very definition of racism. And I think that's the point a lot of people don't necessarily understand. People are like, oh, well, you know, if you just do it by the numbers, I mean, analytically, probability, that's what the Constitution is supposed to protect us from. It's supposed to protect us from these types of abuses of power. Racial profiling was illegal for that reason, but not anymore. Everyone needs to know what's happening in this country, what's happening in our communities, what's happening in your neighbors' communities. How you feel about it, that's for everybody to decide on their own. But we can't be in the dark. Can't be in the dark to what's happening here. And of course, I don't have figures on how many people look like they might be Latino. They never gave me the color chart white men use to discriminate who is okay. That's straight out of Family Guy right there. Unfortunately, Kavanaugh doesn't stop at these racist premises. He keeps going with classic bigoted reasoning. Kavanaugh claims that it is just common sense to stop Latinos who look like they might be engaged in low-wage jobs and question their immigration status. Again, this is only common sense to racist people.
Tomato.
Too much truth. He then goes on to give the whitest possible read on the situation by characterizing the stops as no big deal. He says, moreover, as for stops of those individuals who are legally in the country, the questioning in those circumstances is typically brief, and those individuals may promptly go free after making clear to the immigration officers that they are the U.S. citizens, otherwise legally in the United States. I mean, that does sound pretty white. That's what white people, typically can be. I'm sure it's not that bad. These aren't things that they have to go through. Yes, Brett, it's just a friendly conversation with your local mass jackboot. Just a totally polite and harmless conversation where, as long as you answer the questions correctly, you do not end up on a plane to a concentration camp in Uganda. What could possibly go wrong? Eli Mistel cooking. 1 second applause. Kavanaugh knows he's lying here. You can tell by his word choice. He says stops are typically brief, quote unquote, which means he knows full well that sometimes they are not. He says that people can go free, quote unquote, after making it clear to the Gestapo that they are U.S. citizens, but glosses over, quote unquote, what making it clear actually means. Does anybody reasonably think Brett Kavanaugh is carrying around proof of citizenship in his wallet? Of course he isn't. He isn't carrying his birth certificate around with him. He doesn't have to. He's white. He thinks his proof of citizenship is plastered all over his face. Kavanaugh is functionally saying that it's unreasonable to ask him, a white guy, to prove his citizenship, but it's totally reasonable to ask any Latino to prove theirs. I mean, there's a lot of white Latinos out there, but I guess maybe they just think they're white until they get deported. I will vote for Donald Trump. I had a good time with the FAFO content. I had a really good time with it. I also think now is the time for everybody to really understand what's happening. It never stops in one place. Even for self-preservation, people need to understand what's happening. In the very next paragraph, Kavanaugh shows that he fully understands what's going on, but just doesn't care. He says, finally, although the dissent emphasizes the force allegedly used by immigration officers, that is not the issue in this case. I mean, the pure banality of his evil would be actually laughable if it weren't so serious. Sure, Kavanaugh says this quote-unquote brief stop followed by quote-unquote prompt release can sometimes lead to a straight-up brutality against the 5 million people in Los Angeles who might look Latino or speak with a Spanish accent. But such brutality is not his concern in this case, so he can ignore it. The dissent Kavanaugh referred to was written by Justice Sotomayor and joined by the other 2 liberals on the court. She did all she could to rip the racist Republican majority and Kavanaugh a new one. She writes, the government, and now the concurrence, has all but declared that all Latinos, U.S. citizens or not, who work low-wage jobs are fair game to be seized at any time, taken away from work, and held until they provide proof of their legal status to the agent's satisfaction. She explains that the Constitution prohibits exactly what the government is attempting to do here, seize individuals based solely on a set of facts that describes a very large category of presumably innocent people. The decision from the Republicans and Kavanaugh is explicitly racist. It explicitly authorizes government harassment of all Latinos based on their phenotype. The government literally admits that its intention is to conduct law enforcement through racial profiling, and Kavanaugh fixes his mouth to call his illegal, unconstitutional, racist law enforcement policy, quote unquote, common sense. At some point, the pro-Trump parts of the large and legal voting population of Latino Americans have to reject this abject racism. Republicans cannot politically survive this bigotry if overwhelming numbers of Latinos turned out to vote against them. White people will not help, and black people cannot help, as there are too few of us to flip places like Texas and Florida on our own. The administration and this court can't be stopped, but it's going to take all of us rising together against white supremacists like Brett Kavanaugh. Otherwise, it's just going to be ice raids all the way down in a country that turns speaking with an accent into a presumptive crime. 1 second applause, Eli Mistel. This is where we are. And so this was a very big Supreme Court ruling. Again, so far it's listed as temporary, but understand that what's at risk right now. And this never stops in one place. And I particularly agree with this ending right here. You know, where he says, at some point, the pro-Trump parts of the large and legal voting population of the Latino Americans has to reject this abject racism. Republicans cannot politically survive this bigotry if overwhelming numbers of Latinos turned out to vote against them. White people will not help, and black people cannot help, as there are too few of us to flip places like Texas or Florida on our own. And that is a big thing, right? I mean, my community, we were very upset at how the voting numbers turned out. I think most of the other minority communities, for example, I think the majority of those communities still voted against what's happening. But a growing population, a sweeping population, a significant portion of those populations all did vote for these kind of things. Black people, we are very consistent. We consistently vote against the Confederates. You guys know how I frame these things because that's the lens in which I view this. It's not, to me, red team versus blue team. It's us versus the Confederates. And these are Confederate policies. All of these things are Confederate policies. Let's get rid of the Board of Education. The Board of Education came from the Reconstruction. It's the only reason it existed. Because black people in Reconstruction was like, hey, we got to balance out this reading education thing. Let's put some systems in place. All these book bannings. I saw a story the other day. Florida is banning certain, the dictionary is up for review. I mean, these are Confederate things. And this is another example of it too. This is what fascism does. The Nazi Party benchmarked the Confederates. And right now we have the Supreme Court saying it's okay to racial profile Latinos, which is a very broad, dynamic population that looks like a lot of different things. I don't think any of these things stop in one place, but I know one thing. Nothing can change or ever really does change in this country without a lot of white people being involved or a lot of white people in pain. It takes white people a lot of pain to vote against things like this. And I think Elon Musk I was going to say he captured it pretty well, but he says white people will not help because I think he understands that too. And so, again, from a hip hop standpoint, I always talk about this. Hip hop is culture, but it's also community and away from hip hop itself, completely separate from hip hop. This is what's happening in communities all around us. So everyone should be aware. My name is Justin Hunt. Like and subscribe to the channel. Follow at The Company Man on everything, including The Company Man podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts. It's all happening.
Justin Hunt is here, it's all happening. Justin Hunt is here, it's all happening. The mathematical breakdown of this mighty game of rap we in. It's boom bapping. Systematical culture views, it's radical, it's all happening. Shaking hands and dapping it. Life through the lens of hip hop, from trip hop to yes, dog, you don't stop, you don't stop. Justin Hunt is here, it's all happening. It's all happening, yes, it's all happening. Justin Hunt is here, it's all happening. It's all happening, yes, it's all happening.